So I volunteered to go on a Kosovo peacekeeping mission, and they used that letter for you're going to go to Iraq.
Oh my God, that's two totally different things I signed up for.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you all for being here today with the She Dreams in Color Live, Season 3, Episode 1. I'm honored to introduce our guest, Sadhvi Siddhali Shree. Her occupation is Jain Monk and filmmaker, and the obstacle she's going to discuss is cumulative PTSD. Siddhali, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Jen. Wow.
Yes, wow. So we met in 2018, actually. Siddhali was making a film and working on a State Department project, and I was working for the State Department. We were shooting a human trafficking ceremony they do every year. Tell me what film you were making back then.
It was Stopping Traffic. It was our very first film on human trafficking.
So 2018 is your first film.
Yes.
Okay. And then what has gotten you here to today? Because just last night we screened her most recent film, Balance, which is a perimenopause docuseries.
By this vocation, I am not a trained filmmaker, but it was passion to purpose. So Stopping Traffic was our first film, wanted to raise awareness about human trafficking. And then that didn't feel enough. We needed to make a second one called Surviving Sex Trafficking to discuss and show what is the journey of healing after these women, post-trafficking, what is their journey like? And then a film called For the Animals to raise awareness about animal cruelty, and now Perimenopause, Balance, a Perimenopause Journey, a 4-part docuseries.
And the themes of your documentaries align with your vocation of being a Jain monk.
Yes.
The first Jain monk woman in North America, which is just...
First one initiated outside of India. And that's not an ego thing. It's more of no one is aware about this tiny, tiny religion. And I consider it more of a spiritual tradition that raises awareness about nonviolence. So, for example, we hear about, Martin Luther King Jr. promoting nonviolence, following in Mahatma Gandhi's way. Mahatma Gandhi learned about nonviolence from a Jain nun in India.
Oh, beautiful. Why do you think that is? Why do you think it's kind of erased from the narrative as a storyteller?
Yeah, it's because of the strict adherence to nonviolence. So they go very far as to limiting travel of their monks. So they walk barefoot. They don't go in cars. So my teacher decided to leave traditional the Jain religion to travel to spread awareness. And because of that, I started learning about it. And that's the thing. If we are not willing to cross barriers, traditions, then how can we share? Then the message stays small. And don't we need the message of nonviolence, especially today?
Mm-hmm. And for us to understand how we face similar decisions of, are you going to follow the same pathway because that's how we've always done it and that's what it means to do it? Or are you going to evolve, change, pivot because the reach is greater?
Right.
And that's such a dilemma, a human experience dilemma. And so how did you meet your teacher?
So I was 20 years old. I was already on my spiritual journey, learning about yoga, meditation, and jumping in. I was in a really dark place. I had just graduated high school, but during that time, I was going through a lot of darkness, suicidal thoughts, and my mom passed away 4 years before, and I was just really trying to find myself. I felt like I was in a trapped room with no windows, no doors, and I knew that happiness was on the outside, so they say. And it's like, well, how do I arrive there? And it wasn't until a high school counselor, she looked me dead straight in the eyes. I was sent to the office. Do you love yourself? I'm like, excuse me? Offended. Do you love yourself? And I'm like, who am I supposed to love? I don't know me. I went to a Catholic high school. I went to Catholic elementary school. I always learned to love others, to serve others. That's part of me. But no one taught me love yourself first. And through that journey, that's how I started to go into yoga, meditation, where it's beyond prayer. It's more of an experience with God. And I remember, I know I need to, find a teacher. But if I can share a quick story to how it arrived.
It's your floor. Yes,
So I asked myself, July of 2002, what is the purpose of my life? And I entered this meditative state, and I just started writing, and I didn't even know what I was writing. I was just like, I'm going to write, and this is a very deep connection to my soul. And I flipped the page over, and I asked myself, is this the truth? Is this, because this is it. I flipped the paper over, and the first line is, the purpose of your life is to become a monk, to share your stories of suffering, to help alleviate other people's pain. You will wear white one day. And it just, I'm like, like, I felt guilty because being raised Catholic, you don't question. Not to say I'm going to be disrespectful, but that's what I was raised in. And I thought, am I stepping outside of Catholicism? But this is something freeing. And what is happening? And how am I going to find someone to guide me? Can I even tell anybody this? Because how am I going to explain to other people when they ask me, so what do you want to do with your life? Well, I'm going to wear white and teach people. Like I didn't, you know, it didn't connect for me. So I kept that private. And so I had already enlisted in the military during my senior year, and that's how that journey began. Had I known what my life would be like, I would probably not have enlisted, but 9/11 had just happened. My father was in the Navy. My grandfather served in World War II. I appreciated the military. I liked the discipline. I liked the patriotism. And I wanted to help. That's part of my heart. So I had signed up, went to military, like basic training, all the things, and came back, became an ambulance driver, still lost, still searching. I was like, I need some kind of change. So I was in the Army National Guard, and I said, well, can I, is there an opportunity to volunteer? So I volunteered to go on a Kosovo peacekeeping mission. And they used that letter for, you're going to go to Iraq.
Oh my God, that's two totally different things I signed up for.
Yes, exactly.
Technically I signed up, actually I didn't.
Don't get me started on how I was recruited. I was told I was going to be a nurse. I came out an EMT.
Oh God.
I know.
That's a lot to experience in high school.
I was like 18.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And, I mean, even the guidance counselor's kind of moment of realization, that's a heavy thing to experience as a young person, reflecting on the loss of your mother just a few years before. Right. That is such a whirlwind timeline in your life. So you're deployed into active combat, but are trying to find peace and love yourself.
Right. But I was also trying to emancipate myself from my father, which I didn't have a good relationship with. So I was like, how do I pay for my college? I love the military. They said National Guard is, 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year. So it was okay. I was still like happy with the military part. And then I started getting into my spirituality. Then it started getting really, really real for me. And then I met my teacher. And that, I was like, oh my goodness, he's wearing white.
And you only met him because he came to the United States.
Yes. So he was already established, right? And this is the power of sharing your story, right? There was no blogging at the time, but I created my own website. I wanted to share my spiritual journey, sharing my poems. I probably shouldn't have revealed as much as I did, because this random guy... not my teacher, but one of his students happened to come across, like, you're in the forums, you're sharing your story. And he's like, we met up and it was great spiritual conversation. And then he's like, it seems like you need some guidance. Why don't you connect with my teacher? And so I was already exploring different groups, and I'm like, it didn't feel right, because it was more of like knowledge from the books and not from practice, not from that experience and that realization and wisdom. And so I was like, no, I'm not really looking for a teacher. But then something tugged, like, why don't you just check the website? So I went to my teacher's website. As soon as I saw his picture, my whole body went numb. It was like this weird thing that happened. I was like, I need to meet him for some reason. I meet him. He's wearing white. He talks about nonviolence. He talks about these things that I never shared with anybody, not even online. So there was like no way to know. And he's like, you're a seeker. You need guidance. I know you want to change the world, but you have to first change yourself. That guidance is key. 4 months later, get the call, you're getting deployed.
So you can't get out of being deployed, can you?
No, it can't be like, I found myself, sorry.
I love myself now. I'm sorry.
Flowers, please.
Oh, dang. Okay. So what do you do?
Well, I went and I was so scared. And I think that was traumatizing by itself, just knowing that you're starting on the track of your life purpose. And I became angry with God, like, how are you sending me to get deployed? I was scared. I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
But then I thought, there's something there. I have to go. But what I'm going to do is, like, I'm not there for politics. I'm not there. I'm a medic. So I'm there to serve, whether they're American, whether they're Iraqi, they are a human being, and I will apply my skills. The other half of me was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. And am I going to be ready to save my friend's life? Am I going to be ready to shoot someone if I need to protect somebody? So it was a lot, and it is a lot. And, I do believe there is a role for the military, but I do think young minds is a vulnerable state to be recruiting, and they're in a different place, and they could be trying to leave a traumatic situation, or they're trying to find and then, they're set up and,
And that opens a whole conversation as a young person, which as adults, you look back and kind of see a little bit better of the vulnerability, the baiting with money and a freedom and an independence. And, you're Filipino. So Filipinos are one of the top 5 demographics in the military from other countries. And, so there's a reason we see these numbers in our military, and it is so vulnerable and also, honorable and brave.
Yeah.
And, both can be true, but definitely not supported enough. And this is why veterans' mental health, even all these years later, is so critical.
It's so critical.
Because I can't imagine facing those things at 20, and I've had a lot on me. And that's like another level of imagining what would I think?
Right.
But I see so many times in life when we finally have hope, there's another bridge to cross. Why? Do you know?
It's called human existence, right? It's if we're human, we're going to go through pain and suffering. And that's why we can't, like in my tradition, it's all about the soul. It's about knowing who you are, but it's viewing the soul like the sun. The sun is always shining. Its nature is to shine. Its nature is to love. The thing is, we have a bunch of clouds, and I'm not a scientist, but let's say it's like 2 million miles away from the sun. But those clouds have the power to block all of the sun's light. So that is the suffering. It has nothing, you could say, to do with our soul, but it's something we're surrounded by. And so when we have that understanding, and sometimes it's a traumatic experience, sometimes it's some kind of wake-up call, sometimes it's a loss of somebody we love or a divorce or something, and it's like, you know what? Something needs to change. I need to know myself. I need to find myself. I need to find God inside of me and connect to that part. So then you become willing to do the work to remove those clouds. You don't put it like, why are the clouds here? You go beyond like assigning the clouds to something else. Like, why is my situation? You begin to take responsibility, even though it's not your responsibility, to start removing those clouds. And so that's the power of that action. And then you're like, okay, the clouds are parting. I'm starting to feel lighter. I'm starting to feel happier. My trauma is starting to get healed. So the suffering was there, but it's not like it defines you or you're attached to it. It's still a part of life. Like there's going to be challenges like perimenopause that come along later, right? And different things. But if we know who we really are and we use and dedicate our time, even a little bit every day, to start removing those clouds, so our outlook begins to change, our ideologies begin to change. You start to understand people, and then you start to see like, wow, they are suns with a lot of clouds. Who am I to judge? My clouds are responding to those people's clouds. Is that really the truth? So having that, starting to begin like entering that depth. So all of my pain and suffering, the cumulative from childhood sexual assault to losing my mother, to going to war, to all of the other challenges built upon, just going. all of that with a hammer just opened me up to really find myself. And that's why I feel like I can connect to a lot of people, because pain is universal. And it comes in different ways. It comes physically, it comes emotionally, it comes mentally, generational trauma. There's so many. But when is it going to end? And that's where you become the lighthouse for your own life. And the thing is, sometimes people will try to stop you, like, oh, like everybody was like, where are you going? You're going to Texas to help start a retreat center? What religion? And I'm like, I'm following my heart. And that was a big one. And I know it's a sensitive topic, because sometimes a vulnerable mind can lean into sensitive places and get caught up in different things. But one thing I learned was to trust myself and trust my soul, because if whoever I talked to couldn't provide me the answers or could give me the answers of peace, and I'm having this direct connection with God and in my prayers and my mantras and in my meditation, then that's locked away in my heart, and I have to follow that. Not even my teacher, it's following my heart. And having that ultimate belief and trust and love in myself, that's my guiding force. And so, I left, and everybody's like, okay, well, let's see when she comes back, kind of a thing. And I've been gone for 18 years. But then they started seeing me make films. Oh, you're doing really good with your life. You're helping people. So it was like, oh, now you're recognizing my work.
Okay.
Because now that's something societally acceptable as a traditional something. But soul is unlimited. So how do you trap it inside of a box, inside of a label, inside of a skin color, inside of a culture, inside of a religion? No, soul is free. God is free. So why are we stuck? So that is that process of spirituality. I don't even consider myself, yes, I was initiated into the Jain system, but I just like to call myself spiritual. Like, I follow in my heart, I trust my heart, but I had to go through a lot to get there. But that's my saving grace, my own self.
And you make it sound easy. I'm like,
It's
makes
not.
sense. Just would you say the loving yourself came at the right time? Do you love yourself? That was like the beginning. Do you love yourself? Which is such a hard thing, particularly with childhood trauma, because you learn how to love yourself from the love you did or didn't get. How do you know bad or good if the only thing you know is your baseline? So then you spend some years or decades learning good love, bad love, feels good, feels bad. So love yourself. And then be yourself, which I'm like, what does that mean? Right. I went to 15 schools growing up. Being myself meant being safe in a bunch of different places, being a bunch of different people. And many women experience that, and many people of color experience that, trying to navigate through the world to be safe. So who am I? How do I be myself if I don't know who I am? And then trust yourself. But I've made decisions where pain has been around. So how do you trust yourself? You make one good trust decision, and then, so how does it start to build? And is it just a timeline, and everybody's on a different timeline, and yours was just real condensed?
Maybe it's like all of the above, right? And the thing is, here's a good question for you and our audience. If you close your eyes and you are not your name, you're not your body, you're not your mind, you're not your education, you're not your job, you're not your gender, you're not the money in your bank account, and you remove all of those labels, tell me who you are. And if you even say a word, you've already limited yourself.
Oh my goodness.
Because soul is limitless. That's who you are. And so when we meditate and we learn to relax our body, and how you relax your body, you got to heal the body because the trauma is stored there, and all of the things. So you have to do the work. There's practical things you can do. Like, we teach breathing techniques, we teach mantras. There's things, and through that process, it's like this flower that's blossoming and you have to unfold, or peeling back the onion. It's like, gosh, trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. But then eventually you arrive, and everybody's different. We all have different minds. So to say, what the length is going to be for each person is very difficult, because we're all holding a different set of clouds. But the thing is, I think the key word is willingness. If you're willing to have a new perspective, an open mind, and you begin to start to seek, like, who is the real me? Like when that teacher told me, you got to love yourself. I'm like, well, how do I start doing that? She's like, go to the mirror and say, I love myself. That's a lie. That's a lie. I love myself. Okay. And I started doing that. And I was like, gosh, that is so awkward. But I did it. And it was starting to change and train my brain. And it's the language. And so part of nonviolence is learning to be nonviolent in your thoughts, actions, speech, and intentions towards others and yourself. Can we start with the nonviolence in our own head? What do? I'm dumb. I'm stupid. I did this. The resentment toward yourself, and we're building. So to say, I love myself, that's a road to get there, because you have to start to see and ask yourself, well, how have I been violent towards myself in my thoughts, action, speech, and intention? Forget everybody else. It's asking yourself. And it's a vulnerable place, because it's very easy to say all the things that are wrong with other people and what's wrong in the world. But what about starting with the mirror? And I'm not saying it in a critiquing way of like you start to hate yourself. It's more of, what are the lower qualities in me? What are those shortcomings? And how do I transform them and become aware so that I'm turning anger into love? It's the same energy. It's shifting it. So you do the work, you start to feel better. And what happens? It's automatically happening. It's not like I'm choosing to love myself. It's unfolding. It's happening. You're just like, oh. And that's when it clicked. I remember I was it was my senior year, and it was 3 months after learning starting the love yourself journey. And it was Thanksgiving. And the teacher assigned me my high school counselor. Thank goodness she was more spiritual. Yes, religious, but more spiritual, and giving me different assignments. And she said, do I am statements and really just blurt out, write everything down, what you think about yourself. So I'm like, I'm a good listener. I'm a bad person. I'm a piano player. I'm a kind person, but I'm a jealous person. So I was just writing all of the things and being fully vulnerable at the time, what I felt. And it was this total brain dump. I wrote for 3.5 hours. And it was just like this flood of like, and then I landed on this line that changed everything for me. I wrote, I love myself even though my dad doesn't love me. And something clicked. After that, I felt so much love from myself that I don't have to rely on anybody else's love, validation, approval, or anything. It's coming from me. This is source, God's source love to myself. And that's what I felt. That's what I experienced. And I'm like, oh my goodness, the answer is that. You have to love yourself. So I go back to school and I tell everybody, high school. Everybody, I found the answer to life. You have to love myself. You have to love yourself. And they're like, girl, what drugs are you on? I'm like, this is going to be a lonely journey.
Yes.
And it was, and it had to be. But because of that experience and being willing to do the hard work, and I'm still doing the hard work. It is a journey. There's still challenges. But there's a difference when you have yourself and you know yourself, and that becomes the treasure. It's not money. It's not other things. It's nothing external. It's within yourself. But once you start that journey and you never let go, you are the richest person in the world.
Yes, Siddhali, thank you. Yes. Most of my life, when I've heard people say, it's hard work, you have to do the hard work, I've always visualized this suffering, this awful, and then as I've experienced life, I've realized the hard work is so hidden in there. The hard work is loving yourself with your best friend who doesn't love herself. That's the hard work.
Yeah.
And being out at coffee and loving yourself and feeling her not love herself, and now you start dimming your light. That is the hard work. And the loneliness of having a call to wear white and do something crazy.
Oh, I get the stares.
and you're lonely on that journey of figuring it out. Like, you're telling people, this is what I'm called to do. The hard work is doing it lonely.
I would say alone.
Oh,
lonely is like there's something missing.
It's language.
But
Thank you.
it's alone is all one. So
alone is all one
with an extra L. Call it love.
Okay.
And that's the thing. It's not a lonely journey when you feel complete and you're independent and you're strong. And then from there, you're able to share because you're not feeling like this sense of missing. You're already complete. So like a lighthouse, it shines the light. You're not even dimming your light. You're just like, I'm shining my light. Here it is. Receive it as you need to. But I would say, like, you have to keep shining. There's so much dark there, right? And so when we shine, then people can feel it. Then sometimes it triggers, like, oh, you're happy? Like, oh, you're just on your high horse and, all the comments. It's like, that's not my intention. It's more of like, this is my journey. I'm sharing. Maybe it can inspire you now. Maybe it can inspire you later, but I'm not even here to inspire. I'm only sharing, right? And so it's always up to the person to receive. But deep down inside, there's a soul that's listening. It's the coverage of the clouds, and it's just very, very, very thick. And so learning to pierce through those clouds and having a moment, and that's the thing, when you have, let's say, a traumatic situation, and maybe you're starting to come out of it just a little bit, but you're really thinking deeply, and you're really trying to make sense of things, and you're questioning, like, let's say somebody passes away and you're just like, what if I die tomorrow? Right? Like, is my life complete? And you're in those thoughts. That's your opportunity to have a deeper click. That's a moment of light coming through the clouds. But most people, let's say after the funeral, they go back to normal. They don't hang on to those thoughts. But if we're willing to just kind of entertain those thoughts and go deeper with it, you'd be surprised at what you're going to arrive. And it's not going to match what the world says because the world is the clouds. Everybody's clouds to clouds, talking to clouds, situation is of the clouds. Nobody's talking about the soul. No one's talking about how do we access the soul? How do we heal ourselves to be able to connect to that? And so that's the spiritual journey that is, it's just not studied much because people are not necessarily ready for it. But when they're ready, it can just accelerate quickly.
So with you doing so much work to heal, love, remove the clouds, and then you put yourself in these situations of a sex trafficking documentary, an animal cruelty documentary, the despair of women's healthcare, perimenopause documentary, in also your journey of nonviolence as a Jain monk. I've heard if you have a lot of trauma growing up, you tend to pursue traumatic fields because it's normal. It's your normal. How are you reconciling those worlds? And is it a symptom of your cumulative PTSD to be in that? And the way I describe it is, I feel alive again, which is really dark, but I feel alive again when it's really bad and I'm part of it and I'm witnessing it because it's so natural to my DNA and how I was raised.
I mean, I volunteered to go to Camp Danger during my first month in Iraq. So yes, I understand that. And I think it goes to going through so much pain and suffering. That's where people are. So meet them where they are. And so if you're able to create a safe space for them to share so they can release that pain and suffering. And then at the same time, you put it into a movie and people are watching, and people have so much pain and trauma, but we just don't talk about it. And they watch a movie, they watch a documentary, and then that pain is touched in them. So in a way, I'm intentionally trying to trigger somebody. But why? Because once it's triggered, it's released. If it's suppressed, which we're taught to since we're young, don't say anything. Oh, you're crying? Nope, hold those tears back. You got to be strong. And so we put our trauma into this concrete vault and we put it behind us thinking it's not it's gone. But what are we doing? We're dragging all of those concrete boxes through life saying it's not there, but it is there. And so for me and the films, at least my intention is, one, yes, educate people, maybe trigger them so then that part is released. And then there's like this community, there's this connection, there's the conversations, all at the same time, education, removal of suffering. And I remember somebody had DM'd me or emailed me, and they were on a Delta flight. They watched one of our films. She was a survivor, and she's like, this is everything for me. I never said anything about it, but what you did in the documentary has allowed me to feel a little free, and I'm going to get help now. So we can't think about like we got to change the whole world. Changing even one person's world is a huge thing, but we can't dim our light. We just have to keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Yeah. So why these films? I think for me, it's sharing my story. I think the first film was very difficult, actually, stopping traffic, because for a long period of time, I had forgotten that I was sexually assaulted. And I was in a state of meditation, which we think safe space. But what happened was it actually created space because I got so relaxed for a memory to come up. And I relived my entire trauma knowing what happened to me when I was 6 years old. And I went through the shame, the difficulties, all of the feelings of dirtiness and all of that. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like what am I going to do? And I turned to the breathing techniques, and I talked to my spiritual teacher, and I was just like, finding my way back to being, we could say, normal again, and just, having a little bit of balanced life. But it was always like a part of me. But I'm like, I want to help other people that have suffered in this way. And for whatever reason, I went to the strongest one of human trafficking.
Right.
And something just about it, and going through that, and while editing the film, someone said, why don't you be a part of the documentary and share your story?
Ooh, that's a different level.
That's a different level. And I was like, you know what? I'm ready. Because in my case, how are you going to say, be a voice for human trafficking when you haven't shared your voice yet? For me, I'm not saying every survivor. For everybody. Yeah, I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but for me.
Yeah.
And then I think that's what changed things for me. And it's like putting my story, and it was so vulnerable, just even watching it, it's like, oh, it's so painful. Yeah. Anytime I hear myself going through it, I see myself and hearing my own story. But what means the most to me is after a screening is someone comes up to me, and even a male that I've never told anybody, but I'm going to tell you this, like I was a release.
Yeah.
That's a beginning of a healing journey. But the thing is, we just don't talk. We always suppress, never express. So can we express it? And even if it's not a therapist, but can you write it? Can you read that letter to a tree? That's expression. So we have to find our own ways that we're comfortable with. But so as long as that stays locked up inside of us, silently, it's hurting us. That's why we can't find the peace, because we haven't looked at the dark. And just one thought is, to polish a gold, you have to put it in fire to shape the gold, to polish it, to shape it. So it's painful, but what comes out on the other side?
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you. And I definitely want to reiterate, because this is so important, and you said it, but I really want to say it out loud. You do not have to share your experience for it to be out of you, and for it to be valid, and for it to help others. In this world of social media, and the phone and the world is right here, many people, when they have that moment, when they go through some purging, they then have this guilt of, I have to say it to help other people. I have to say it because she said it. If I don't admit, if I don't stand beside them, I'm a coward, or I won't save people. And that is absolutely not true. It's your story. It's your experience, and you don't owe it to anybody. Getting it out comes in a lot of forms.
Right.
And we'll talk with our therapist for Q&A afterwards, who can go into more of that, because what I see at 48 is the kids are raised. work is pretty easy to do at this point, and I have the meditation moment you had. It's calm, it's quiet, I'm decentering people. And all of a sudden, all this stuff just starts bubbling up because my life is pretty chill. And I think once women stop being so busy and it gets a little quiet, it's that meditation moment of like, oh my God, there's a lot of concrete blocks behind me. What do I do? And then you have perimenopause messing with all of it. And I think this is where we see a lot of trauma from childhood, from life, from work, from marriages, relationships, whatever, even childbirth, that it has to be dealt with. And that's where the hard work comes. And for people of a certain age, you either do the work or you choose not to. But that is definitely a fork in the road. It is. For sure.
Yeah. And you don't even know it is a choice. You're not aware. You don't know because you're suffering. You have your stuff, your stresses, your all of the things and the family. It's like, well, what do? I'm going to go spend time by myself and go find myself selfish. Like that's a thinking. And so we don't do that. But all it takes is 5 minutes, right? Can you find 5 minutes out of the 24 hours to be with yourself and silent your mind and relax and be willing to see what comes up? We hear about meditation and it's like, yes, helps your blood pressure, become calm and all of these things. But no one talks about the biggest benefit of finding your real self, your soul. Again, when you have that, you have everything to guide you because you have this, what I call soul confidence, that it's so unshakable because you know yourself, even as you're healing, even as you're doing the things. But what we think as ourselves is not the real thing. It's all temporary. So why aren't we learning about the thing that's actually permanent within ourselves, right? That light is always on, but how to access that, how to be with it. So 5 minutes, give yourself at least 5 minutes. And you might be like, oh, I want to increase it to 10. Let's find that time.
And that leads me to your occupation of being a filmmaker. And we talked about this a little bit in our exchanges together. Being a woman in a field predominantly visible by men can be difficult because you get a label of it's got to be perfect. She's a control freak. She's got to oversee it. She's got to do this. She's got to do that. When really it's you exercising your knowledge and expertise in a lot of ways. Not all. Some are unhealthy, but in a lot of ways. And so as a filmmaker with your colleague, Sadhvi Anubhuti, what has that experience been like traveling the world as two women of color and two monks?
Great question. I think it's rooted in freedom. So we're not trained filmmakers. We went to Google for our training, how to set up lights, how to conduct an interview, you should see our behind the scenes, photos. It's like we're holding the camera and we're trying to, listening to these powerful stories. And I think it was our just connection to telling the truth and not putting ourselves in the world of how you should be. I think by becoming a monk, I've already renounced what the world says and what it requires and what it should look like. And in the very beginning, was I a very direct director? No. I was like, let's figure it out. And that's like how I am. And even still, like now on a fourth project and the docuseries out, I've grown through that process. And it's not like how to go up the ladder in the Hollywood world. It's more of like, just do your thing, do the hard work, figure it out, and the people will come. And I have found the right team, and they're mostly men, and they work well with us. They know our hearts. I know their hearts. I listen to their feedback. It's a co-creation, just like you shared at the beginning of this episode, where we're all co-creating. There's like an energy there. And so I think that's where, for me, the truth lies. It's like, I know I'm staying true to myself and how I'm telling the story the way I want to. Yes, I have to learn the technical things, but the essence is in the storytelling, and that has to align with my heart. And if the people do not align with me and the story, then we're not aligned. So I'm letting that person go.
you just hit a trigger spot.
Oh, sorry.
So I really believe, because I moved schools so much growing up and lost people before social media, I just lost people. I don't like not being aligned with people. I don't like when they don't fit. I don't like when we're not a match. And so I struggle with that. Well, what do we have to do to be a match? What do I have to change in me to be a match so you are aligned with me? Because it's unfortunate to lose connections or relationships or professional working situations. But the beauty of being aligned in your world like this, like today, with so many people who are so aligned, is so incredible. It's really astounding, the flow, which is a word you use often, the flow that you get into when you just kind of let the other just pass by. I guess this is your cloud analogy. Just pass it by and
Doesn't
then collect
it.
it.
Fleeting?
It does. It's so much more aligned.
Yeah.
To just open your hand and let it go. Oh, that's the hard work.
And that's the thing. You never know who you're going to come across. And that's why you still have to walk, right? It doesn't mean you have to hold everybody's hand. But during that journey of walk, you might be like, you know what? That's somebody I'm actually really aligned with. I want to stay in touch with them. And then you know, something grows, something happens, and, you know, like, let's do a project together. And you just never know how something is going to evolve. But the main thing is you do not lose yourself to meet others, someone else's clouds. Don't give up your son. Don't give up your son. Do the hard work to protect your son. Not everybody's going to understand that. That's where the alone part comes. But there's the freedom in that. There's a peace in that no one else is going to be able to give you. No one can give you all the love that you need. No one's going to be able to give you all the peace that you need. You are the one to give that to yourself. So when you have that, and then you find other people along the way that kind of supplement that and align with that, you're just like, wow, my job's easy. Wow, I love storytelling. Wow, why is this so easy? And yes, it's human trafficking and perimenopause, but why is this so great? Because you're with yourself and the right people around you.
Oh, gosh. Thank you. Thank you, Siddhali.
Thank you.